wonderful expert and a guest. So, today we have our Maximilian over here, always giving them that great insight. And we also have JP Grace. He's a track star.
Oh, by the way, just to correct some, Gray is our new producer for
Yeah,
the
and also
following
our
episodes.
guest. And Gray, here, other than producing, is going to quote unquote fill in Jason's spot, but not necessarily just talking about baseball. He'll give insight as we go along on various things. So I hear that Tom Brady has gone through quite the transformation. You guys have any comments on that?
I can start off. According to an article by Yahoo Sports, it says Tom Brady is finally back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but they still are quite unsure of what caused him to miss 11 days of training camp. And according to Tom Brady in a miniature interview he did, he said he is not interested in explaining. He just said, as I quote, I'm a 45-year-old man. There's a lot going on.
What about you, Max? What do you think about this new development?
For me, it's like for Brady, he is a he's a 45 instead of 45-year-old man. People who play that sport don't usually make it to 40, let alone 45, unless you are a kicker or a punter because of the severe injuries. So I think he sort of had a space where he's like he recognizes his age, and I think it's older you get, just harder and harder to play that sport. So the fact that he is even still playing is shocking to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's by as a Giants fan and a New York fan, New York sports fan. I feel bad saying this, but he is the greatest football player of all time, and I think Max is right. It's a long time. 45 years is a long time in any sport, like basketball, baseball. So he's a great athlete. But the thing is, there's only so much I guess a body can take playing football. So I mean, I feel like it's been his time for a while. He's already got all the accolades. He's got 6 Super Bowl rings. Max, am I right about that?
I think so.
Yeah, he has 6 Super Bowl rings, and I think it should have been his time a while ago. But he keeps on coming back. But I think he should retire. And obviously, we can't really show the image, but he is very skinny. He does not look like he's in good shape, and I don't know if I don't know how that's going to affect the Buccaneers this season, but I hope all is well with him.
Yeah, I'll say this. According to his bio, he's been playing. I think he's been playing football for like over 20 years. He's been doing it for almost half of his life now. And I think what Tom Brady might be struggling with is when he retired. I think back when he announced like back in January or February when he first said he wanted to retire, and came back like what 2 weeks later. I think what he was struggling with at the time, and this is just my take. It can be completely wrong, but this is just what we're theorizing about. I think when you do something for so long of your life, your brain becomes accustomed to it. Like if it tries to defer from its everyday natural habits, it's trying like the brain kicks in and is trying to steer it back in the course of what the actual natural habits are. That's why habits such as smoking, drinking is very hard to break when you do it for so long. So I think that's what's going on with Tom Brady. I think in his heart he wants to retire, but his brain is telling him different, and I think he's having a little bit of trouble trying to balance out the controls of his brain and his heart at the same time.
I
Yeah, I
think
think
with like a similar thing. Sorry, right? I just want to add one thing. Gray is kind of right. I mean, a similar thing happened with Michael Phelps in the Olympics a few years ago. He retired, and I'm not gonna. Obviously, it's really sad. He went down a very dark path, and then he had to come back and kind of redeem himself a little bit. It's like kind of like that with a lot of athletes these days, and especially with football, with all the brain injuries we see. A lot of like illegal activity and stuff after they retire with like domestic violence and stuff. So, retiring is really hard for athletes, and as Gray said, he's been doing it for more than half of his life. So, he might be having like a similar struggle to that Michael Phelps is having or had, excuse me, and I think that all will work out. I just think it's time for him to retire because Michael Phelps, like similar to Michael Phelps was like swimming for that amount of time, and when he knew it was time to retire, he came back, won a couple of medals, and then retired again for good. I think it's all about knowing your time when it comes to professional sports.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of valid points with retirement because even outside of sports, people struggle to retire, especially if it's something of a tool of the trade they've done for all their life, like with athletics. And they say they're going to retire, and they kind of semi-retire because they just are so in the habit and love doing the job. And then when they finally fully retire, they feel like, well, what now am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
Unless they've had plans like traveling or whatever and they never could do before. But even then, they just feel like they still need to work on something.
And the thing is, though, is that like a lot of these, including on like the NBA side, a lot of them don't have college degrees and stuff. Like they go to college so that they can get their 1 year NBA eligibility out of the way and then get drafted, and then they don't really have anything to do left. Like they can go back into coaching, but that's very competitive. They can go back into being an analyst for like ESPN or something. It's very hard for like these professional athletes who, and especially there's a documentary on the Olympics that I watched recently where it's like they don't get paid at all. So a lot of those athletes struggle when they retire because they have to go to online universities because they're traveling with the Team USA team. So, I mean, retiring from sports after, you give up your education for something like that, it's really tough to come back to. But no, I think the best thing to do is probably go back to school, finish, and graduate. That's what J.R. Smith is now doing with North Carolina A&T. He's one of the dumbest people in the NBA, in my opinion, in terms of how he lived his lifestyle. Now he's redeeming himself.
You see, I don't have anything personally against people who feel like going to school just to get scholarships in sports and do a career in sports. But when you do it for so long, and I don't know that much about sports as you guys, but I'm just here to kind of give you a little insight from a different, like, psychological standpoint. When you do something for so long, like I said, the brain becomes so accustomed to it. So when you're doing sports for so long of your life, and you try to do something different, your brain is not recognizing it. The brain continues to develop, but it's like trying to start something small and it's just easily overcrowded by the passion of sports. And I think that's what Tom Brady might be struggling with. But going back to what I was saying, like you go to school to get an education, and I hear people say, "Oh, well, I don't need this later in life." And then when it finally comes for when they retire and they don't know what else they want to do with their life, they're not fully educated. They screwed around. And I'm not saying this is what these people did in the NFL, NBA, or anything. But most people, and people who even go to like High Point, are going to school for sports. And like I know some of them on the basketball team are really paying attention in class, but I don't know anything else about the other sports. And I'm just using this as an example. So if they go out and they do scholarships with the NBA, get jobs with the NBA, become professionals, and they do it for, let's say, 20 years of your life. So by the time they get done, they'll be about 45, 46 years old. And if they want to retire, the average human being lives for 75 to 82 years. What are you going to do with the last 30 years? And I think that's why these people push themselves to stay in sports for as long as possible.
Yeah, and it's remarkable how long Tom Brady has done that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
He's done it longer. He started literally before some of us were even born. And that's a long time.
Do you have any insight, Matt?
Well, yeah. So he's been on this for 20 plus years. The average NFL career is, I believe, around three NFL seasons is about an average NFL career. So he has been doing this for almost my whole entire lifetime. Basically since I was like 1 or 2 years old. And it's just amazing to see like that, like the mentality and the fact that he's his like sort of mind is still there after 20 years is amazing sort of to see because usually, yes, it's also like like a lot of people like leave the game because they're injured, but also it's because like they're like I just can't I mentally can't just do what I did. I just can't like it's injuries, but it's also like you're like a lot of quarterbacks are like I can't throw the ball as long as I did about 10, 15 years ago. I can't do this. I can't do this, and then it comes back to the idea where it's all sort of like it's a physical aspect, but it's also a mental aspect, and the fact that been able to do this for so long is the idea of how much he put into his mental and physical work ethic for the past 20 plus years.
And I have a quick question for you guys. So I'm curious, since in a different podcast that we've started up the afternoons, we talked about how the entertainment industry is becoming more political. Have you guys seen much of a transition with that as far as sports, where sports are becoming more political than they should be?
Oh, sorry, Gray.
I will say this. I think the political aspect of sports started with Colin Kaepernick.
Yes, that's
2016, I
a
believe.
big issue. There's a reason
That
why
was,
it's not
I
employed.
think that was when the NFL, NBA, all of that stuff really started to shift. But we saw the first wave of it in 2016 with Colin Kaepernick, and then we saw the second wave of it in 2020.
With LeBron James.
LeBron James, George Floyd,
Yeah.
people
Well-
spraying BLM on the courts, jerseys that said BLM on it. I think this when we saw the second wave of it come through, but I think it really goes back to 2016 when the first wave
Yeah.
of the political virus came into and took over the sports industry.
Well, yeah, LeBron James, and this is why I don't like him as a person. He's not smart. Like, he followed the Colin Kaepernick trend with kneeling for the anthem. He supports, he's doing stuff with China. He's saying he's
Yeah.
oppressed. Meanwhile, this oppressed in quotes person built a house for his daughter. I mean,
Also, this is the first oppressed person I've ever met that makes millions of dollars a year.
billions now.
Billions,
he's
yeah.
the first NBA player to be a billionaire.
Like that to me does not say oppressed. That says uneducated.
Yeah, he didn't go to college, so
No. And this is why I think this is a problem that affects every one of us in our generation now. Is our generation believes they can do it. And sometimes it comes back to harm them. I'm not saying LeBron James is in our generation because he's way out of the age limit for it. But how selfish is it to say you are oppressed when you make billions of dollars a year? Again, $1 billion. That's like a lot of money. Like, I don't know a film that's been made for $1 billion. Like, as a budget. I've seen movies that have made $1 billion. But to say you're oppressed and you still get billions of dollars to dunk a ball. And we have doctors that don't even make. I don't
yeah.
know one doctor who will ever make that in his lifetime.
The sad thing about all this is LeBron is worried about this. Meanwhile, the Lakers are just freaking horrible. He's not very smart, especially what he's done with the Lakers for the past couple of years, trading away that young core for Russell Westbrook, who's now done nothing, didn't make an All-Star appearance. Meanwhile, they gave away Montrezl Harrell, who has promise, Lonzo Ball, who improved a lot, Brandon Ingram, who became an All-Star. He's not a very smart person, and he's infected all of these organizations that he's in, like the Cavs. The Heat, he was very successful getting that big three together, but with the Cavs, he got Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving together. Kyrie Irving left him after one season because he wanted to win by himself, and then Kevin Love just turned to nothing. And then now with the Lakers, you got Anthony Davis hurt, gone. Not gone. He'll be back next season, but who knows how he's going to play. You got Russell Westbrook, who who Lakers fans hate and boo. And I've always said this about Russell Westbrook. He's a stat pattern. He's not really like as hyped up as everybody says he is. So I think LeBron really needs to like crack down on the Lakers more and stop with this, other stuff. Max, do you think the Lakers will make the playoffs?
Well, concerning that's more of the larger topic. I'm not really concerned if the Lakers make the playoffs. Like they might. Going back to the sort of the idea of what I believe an athlete is. Sort of like I believe you have the platform, and you have it in your. I feel like if you don't utilize it to the best of your abilities, then you're just using it as a shame towards yourself or towards anyone who has it. Also, the beautiful thing I love sports not because because of the game itself. I like sort of what happens, and I love fall in love with it. What happens around the game, like what happens off the court, I feel like is almost as much and more important than what happens on the court. And that's sort of my opinion.
Yeah, but they should just keep that stuff on like social media. It doesn't have to come into basketball, football, baseball, whatever. Like kids, like the NBA almost stopped playing the national anthem, which gets played at like our schools, like the Pledge of Allegiance. They almost stopped that because of Mark Cuban.
They're trying.
It's just
but they're trying to be taught. Players are trying to show the younger generation of how to hate this country.
Yeah. Look at Brittany Griner now.
All I can picture is just bars. That's all I can picture. It's just her behind bars. I mean, she got in trouble for walking around with drugs, if I'm not mistaken. That's why these countries have consequences. And I don't know much about it, but like the last I heard, is if you do something illegal, there are consequences. But what I truly don't understand, and this is a very unpopular opinion, is I want to know why these players make as much money as they do. I don't believe dunking a ball is worth billions of dollars.
Well, I mean, you're a freak athlete. You get sponsorships from Nike, Adidas, whoever, Under Armour now. Like Stephen Curry's now sponsored by them. It's a lot. Like it's something that's like I guess an important part of like history with sports, and so you're gonna get a lot of money from it because you're basically a celebrity. A bunch of kids look up to you. It's similar to how you're basically if you're an actor, technically, like kids look up to certain actors, so like people look up to athletes. I mean, it's the same thing, but like, and these people are doing it at like a freak ability. Like LeBron James and Michael Jordan can dunk from a free throw line, which is 10 feet away from a basket. I mean, they do deserve a lot of credibility and they go through a lot of hard work. There's like workouts for NFL player. There's those extreme workouts that they do in the off season. For lacrosse, there's a reason why there's fall lacrosse for college teams. There's a lot of hard work, even though college lacrosse doesn't get paid, but it's a lot of hard work. So I can see why they get paid billions of dollars, especially with the sponsorships that happen. So I can see it.
I mean, that's just an unpopular opinion. Me personally, I don't think they should be making as much money as they do to just dunk a ball. And that's just my take on it.
But the thing is, it's much more than like dunking. Like the NBA, there's a lot more to dunking. Like the same way how like football, there's a lot more than touchdowns. Like there's.
I think most of these is because it's a cult following. The cult following it has, and they know they can milk it. They know people will pay, and that's how these people make the money they do. It's the same with like rising celebrities. If like a big hit comes out, their prices soar, like their fees. And I think I will never understand it. That's just my take, but I personally do not believe they should be making the money they do.
Well, speaking of money, do you guys think, no matter what figure it is, probably not as much as professional, but do you think that college athletes should be paid?
Absolutely, and I think Max and I, this has been a topic that's come up in a lot of sports management classes of ours. I mean, I think so, especially because you have sports like I know cross country and track. You don't really do that professionally after you graduate. There's the Olympics, but as I said with the Olympics, there's a lot of athletes who get depressed after they retire because they don't make a lot of money. Like there was one person in that documentary who was watching them, was working at a restaurant and was watching themselves compete. LeBron James and like Tom Brady, they're not going to be working at a restaurant and watching themselves play in a Lakers game or a Buccaneers game after they retire.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but anyway, going back into that, yeah. So like sports like cross country and track, like that's basically like your pro version of that sport. So I think yeah, athletes do need to be paid, and also the NFL, and not the NFL, excuse me, the NCAA gets a lot. I feel like there's a lot of money to be given around.
Yeah, yeah, athletes should get paid. The question is not. I don't think is if they should get paid. I think the question should be how should they get paid? Meaning like the payment. Like what there should be rules in the sense of like because I truly believe you should get paid, but at the same time there has to be some sort of like guidelines or some sort of rules that or thing what people can and can't do as an athlete. Because at the same time, you're if you're going to school and making this, there's certain aspects where I know based off stories I've heard from like college students are like I have my meal plan, but I'm getting a bare minimum meal plan, and sometimes even if I don't have the meal plan, am I going to eat? So it comes back to sort of simple like logistical necessary like needs that athletes should be able to afford, like any other student.
Yeah, and the thing I'd like though, like a counter argument against myself though, the thing I'd like though is that college athletes don't get paid. It's because it makes it competitive. Makes it competitive. They're playing to win, not playing for the money. You see a lot of professional athletes now, play for money. So it's nice, and that's why I love college football because it's nice to see people go at it. Like March Madness is, there's a reason why people love March Madness over the NBA playoffs. It's because they go at it, and it's nice to kind of see very competitive basketball, very competitive football, without like money and celebrity status being involved.
Yeah. I actually have to agree with, despite my previous comments about like how much money the people in the NFL and NBA and all that stuff should be paid. I actually have to agree with JP on this one because that's how it works. Like you have to compete. It is a competitive world. You fight for the position you want, and you have to prove to your bosses or hirees that you want the job, and you have to prove to them that you are the one for it, that they are not wasting money. Because companies do not like to lose money. I don't know one company on this planet that loves to lose money, that just wakes up and say, you know what, I'd love to lose $1 billion in revenue today. So I have to agree with JP.
Yeah,
they're already getting scholarships, so that's that.
Yeah.
Especially for a school like High Point, I think that's enough for the college level because they're not doing it for a job.
Yeah,
If you're doing it for a job,
you go play
that's
pro.
different.
Yeah,
But these college students are not doing it for a job.
I mean,
most college students are working at restaurants.
Can I just go off a side story though? I will admit though that it is kind of hard, like with D1 athletes to get a job. Like some of us do need to afford some stuff. Like for me, I worked as a sports writer for a company called Fast Version Media Sports because I needed to pay for school, so I had to balance out track, work, and school. So I can see why D1 athletes do want to get paid. Like I know I would like get paid, but it's nice to kind of see that there's like sports playing for competition and instead of like playing for money.
And this discussion actually brought up another question to mind. So I'm curious with what we originally talked about with retirement and how Tom Brady, definitely taken it in stride with the timing of it for himself personally. Is there, if you guys could implement a program of some sort, how would you go about helping athletes in like their 40s and 50s to fully retire and then not get like depressed? Like, is there like a thing you'd implement where they could learn another skill trade or something like that, so it's not as hard for them?
I mean, that's why you see like that's why J.R. Smith I think is going back to North Carolina A&T. Like they're like I think a lot of them like some of them like him will go back to college and try to learn something new. I mean again they make millions of dollars so, but like again there's stuff that they can do after they retire like they can become coaches, assistant coaches. That's what Tim Duncan became, the assistant coach of the Spurs right after he graduated. Excuse me, retired, not graduated. Yeah, so he became an assistant coach after he retired. He might be the Spurs' next head coach after Greg Popovich retires, but or he could be like an analyst on the NFL Network, ESPN. You know, there's a lot of stuff for them to do when they retire. So I think ultimately that there is a plan. They just have to be willing to put in the work to make a new life for them after they retire.
Well, is there any other topic you guys want to discuss?
Oh, Max, we do the who's the greatest point guard debate, or is that
If you want, I'm here.
remember? Okay, so Max and I played 2K the other day, and Max, who'd you say was your favorite point guard again?
I didn't.
Or who'd you say was the greatest point guard again? Sorry.
I said who my favorite point guard is at that point.
Oh, I thought you said the best.
No.
Oh, never mind.
So
All right.
anyway, so I've said I believe that Magic Johnson is the greatest point guard. I would sort of say that there's a different conversation when I sort of consider who my personal favorites are. So that's sort of what I sort of put on that scenario.
Yeah. I think Steph Curry may have surpassed Magic Johnson.
That's your opinion? I truly don't believe so, but I believe Steph Curry is the greatest shooting point guard of all time. I don't think he's the greatest. I think he's the second greatest player at that position.
I think I can see where you're going with that, but like, still, Steph Curry has completely changed the game. Magic Johnson basically was doing what like Jerry West was doing before him. Like, yeah, he was great because he was 6'9", he could do all that stuff, but still at the same time, the way Steph Curry changed the game and stuff, and has made like big men and stuff want to shoot threes. That's why I was saying that he's the greatest of all time in terms of being a point guard. Now, Magic Johnson, in my opinion, I think he's like one of the best point guard. He's the best point guard in terms of passing, which really makes you a great point guard. But I still think Steph's the better all-around player.
You are entitled to that opinion, but I believe that I would say that for me, I go like probably Magic and probably Curry, and then probably I would say Oscar Robinson, and then probably believe I'd say Thompson, Jerry West, in probably that order.
Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree with that list. I was only saying Steph is the greatest of all time by the way he's changed the game today. Ray, any other topics?